Dude, I can't think of Ben Affleck without thinking of the Voyage of the Mimi. I cannot think of him without thinking of that. Who would have thought that kid would have played Batman like 20, 25 years later?
Batfleck, right?
Yeah, Batfleck. Everybody, welcome to One Set.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, no. So yeah, I mean, the thing with them is like it's my parents' house. I couldn't tell my parents like take your 3 dogs somewhere else so I can let my dog
Yeah.
that's not even mine. It's Cheyenne's out. So we don't have a cage for him. My dad, we got a cage for our first Yorkie, and she might have went in there once or twice because she has like temper problems. She has territorial temper problems, like especially with my mom. But even if she's on my dad's lap and I walk in and I look at her and I walk close, she'll start doing the thing. Throwback to that episode of Flashback Friday, right? But yeah, I mean, I call her Damien because I think she's possessed by the devil. She's pretty awful. But no,
you're still
seriously.
talking about the Yorkies, right?
yeah, no,
yeah.
Yeah,
because I remember I was coming into your house the one time and I was trying to fist pound with your dad, and then the one dog's like and I'm like, hey, whoa, like, okay, I'm just trying to be friendly. He's like, yeah, he does that.
I said, yeah, he does that because it's a she, but I call her Damien like the devil.
Yeah, she.
So yeah, we've had Cheyenne's dog Aquino locked in my bedroom, and it's like we can't both leave the bedroom at the same time. So it's constantly like, okay, you take this shift. You got to go to the bathroom. I have to stay here. Oh, you want to go downstairs? Can't leave him alone because he will bark. He will scratch at the door. And you know that little like, I think it's a bronze or like silver plate where the doorknob, not the knob itself, but the whatever, like latches into. Yeah, mine's broken in half as of like a month ago. So if he pushes hard enough, he'll open my door. So I have to take a bungee cord and tie it around my doorknob to the doorknob that is 2 feet over here. And I'm like, how is this any different from a freaking cage? Like,
right.
Instead, it's like, oh, free reign of my bedroom and all of my things versus I could just put him in a cage with a couple toys and he will make the same amount of noise. And we actually found...
You're pretty much in parenting 101, bro.
Yeah. I mean, literally, Cheyenne and I were like, if we don't have the patience for this with the dog, we got some things to talk about here, right?
Yeah.
Like all kidding aside, we totally have. We're like,
and you definitely have your moments, trust me. It's like being a father of over 2 years, like you have your moments of like, this is definitely, it's hard. Like, if it was easy, everybody would have a kid. There's days obviously where he is great, and it's like, okay, I mean, he's doing blah blah blah, and then he's those middle-aged twos where, he can't stay still. He's, starting to talk back a little bit more. He's starting to get him more of a personality. And he did something to me the other day. He was watching TV, and I think he asked me to change the channel to something else, and I didn't, understand what he was saying, because he's starting to, really put words together, but not really. You can't really understand what he's saying still. So I didn't know what he was saying, and he went to the edge of the couch, and he started doing like the little. And I didn't know what he was doing at first, so I said, "Hey, buddy, be careful! Like, don't stand near the edge." And like he's in front of me, going like this, and he looks back at me. He's like, "No," and I look. I'm like, "What did you say?" Like, so I'm like, this dude is getting a personality each and every day. It's crazy, but yeah, and those are the moments that make you want to laugh. But then there's times where, like, again, the sleepless nights that you go through those first 6 to 8 months, you're like, oh my God, this is what they talk about. Like, the crazy, like, up every 2, 3 hours and this and that. But at the end of the day, it's the greatest gift you will ever receive. Through the hard times and the good times, it's probably the most rewarding thing you'll ever get.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely for me, like, I remember being in late middle school, early high school, and in my mind I was like, see I guess I had a pretty good situation with my three sisters, my two older and my one younger, and our space between,
Mm-hmm.
like how much older that my older sister was than me and how much younger that my younger sister was than me. I was just fortunate to know that I was like between me and my one older sister, that her and I were the two in the middle. Um, so like I always kind of wanted my older and my younger sister to have like a stronger bond eventually. But I think that my sister, my oldest one, who was 15, um, like 2 weeks shy of being 15 was when my youngest
Yeah.
was born. So, um, there were like, I look back, there's pictures that look like they're like happily sisters, but it's like they just were like basically generations apart and didn't under like I just don't
Yeah.
think that there was like a general um I mean I don't want to say a general understanding, because obviously my older sister understood, but my younger sister didn't, because she was young.
Mm-hmm.
She was like,
Right.
they were light years away from each other, right? Um
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting family dynamic when your ages are that far apart. Like, at least with you and your brother, you guys are 2 years apart. Is it is it
Mm-hmm.
just a little over 2 years, or is it closer to three?
It's a little over 2.
It's
Yeah.
still, you guys grew up in the same generation though. Like, even when you
Mm-hmm.
graduated high
Yeah.
school in 2005,
He was
and
right behind
he
in
was right
2007.
behind. Like,
So,
the world wasn't different to him. Uh,
no.
in my opinion, um, I don't know. Yeah, you guys are basically right next to each other. Um,
Mm-hmm. And just like anything, we have our differences with, you know, you know, generation stuff. Because I mean, again, 86, he was 89, so we both went through 90s and everything. So like we both have our differences with, like, because he had his own group of friends growing up in high school. I had my own group of friends. I had my own situations. He had his own situations. So, we have differences, but we grew up in the same era. So, like you were saying, we're not too much far off from
sure.
like generational things.
Do you think that he like bought into like more serious like I don't like politics removed, but do you think like how do you have had to talk to him about 9/11 before, right? Like at least once. Like did he ever mention like where he was or talk about that?
Well, again, I was a freshman in high school, so he was in
7th grade.
seventh grade
Mhm.
at the time. So I haven't really, we haven't had a conversation of what we went through that day, but I know we were both in the same aspect of like we can't believe what's going on, and I think it was just more just at how you can say too that everybody thought it was a joke until they flipped those TVs on right before that second plane hit or after the second plane hit, and it was just like, okay, no more joking, this is serious, and everybody was in a standstill that day. Like, are we going to be going home? Are we staying here? Is there going to be more attacks? My mom had always told me, she's like, if there was going to be a third plane that hit, I was about to take you guys out of school. I don't care what they were saying.
Sure.
But thankfully, there wasn't anything else. Unfortunately, I mean, it's just unfortunate what happened that day. But thankfully, it was. I mean, it didn't get any more out of hand. But yeah, that was just. We've never, like, to answer your question, we've never had like a full out conversation about, hey, what were your thoughts that day? What were you going through that day? But I can probably say we probably felt the same way of like, okay, I am like in awe of like what I'm seeing right now, because what, ninth grade, we were what,
14.
uh
You were
14,
you were
15.
you were 15 cuz your birthday had just passed in
So
July. Uh,
you're still pretty young, you're of like figuring out that type of like, because not many 14, 50 year olds are watching the news at that time. So you're like trying to process everything what's going on.
Well, and it's also important to acknowledge, like at that age, you feel pretty powerless, right? Like, and I think that's the point.
Uh-huh.
Um, like I don't. Obviously, my younger sister was in 2nd grade. I don't. I mean, I think that she, especially at this point, knows what happened and knows the impact that it had because, like,
Yeah.
I feel like the patriotism at least lasted the rest of her elementary and middle school years, like because the effects of 9/11 carried on for years. And not that they still don't, but it's like
Right.
over time. I know I've talked about this one before. Is like when I teach kids now, I'm like, you weren't even born to know that it happened.
Yeah.
It's before
That's
your
that's insane to me
it's
too.
before your time. Like I can't
Hmm.
I can't even mention it because I wind up teaching on days that wind up being September 11th, and the whole country goes, 9/11, never forget. And these kids are like, yeah, I can easily forget it because I wasn't even here.
Right. Or you don't understand the fact of why people are so, detrimental to that date. They understand, the reasonings for it, but like, hey, I I wasn't around until years after that, so I don't know the full impact of like how to really process that day, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I know you and I were talking this morning, um, and because we're such huge fans of Tom and Bert and Two Bears One Cave,
Hmm.
um, and how I was watching this past week's episode, and Bert's like, I feel like an old man because I don't know what none of this music is. And Tom literally said, it's because you stopped listening to new music and it happens to everyone. It happens to everyone. And I know friends of mine that
Yes.
are not much older than me that 10 years ago, they were still listening to this stuff. And granted, like I said, this friend of mine is maybe a year older than me. And when I say a year,
Hmm.
I mean 6 months. Graduated in '04, like
Okay.
just made the cutoff from the year before. And
Yeah.
I want to say not 5 years out of high school, his library of music was mostly what he listened to in high school. And I was like, whoa,
Hmm.
you need to get a little bit good with like some of the newer stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like, and really, it was only the artists that were just hitting their stride when he was in high school that were releasing new stuff in the 5 years after he was out of high school that he was like, oh yeah, I liked this so and so's person's new stuff. And
Hmm.
then 5 years after that, I was in the car with him, and it was still that same playlist that he was playing. And I was like, I I just decided to say nothing, be like, he's maxed out. Like he can't stand the music as of like right at the late 2000s, entering early 2010s, except for
Yeah.
some little blurbs here and there. And I used to think, not negatively, but like, come on, man, you're not that old, right?
Right.
I think 2016, and I think this because as I've talked about on the show, I used to travel that one convention circuit for hip hop teaching. I think that
Hmm.
I think that was the year where I really felt like the hip hop music industry change over to the point where I it wasn't that I didn't enjoy or like the dancing or the dancers or the community, or and I didn't appreciate what the choreographers had to offer. The music actually turned me off. Like
Hmm.
sincerely turned me off to the point where I think that after that I kind of just said, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be doing this travel bit that much anymore, because I was like, if I can't if I don't have the love for the music that I'm hearing while I'm letting it actually
Yeah.
manipulate my body to move the way and my soul the way that it is, I think that that's
Hmm.
super important, because it has now transcended into, 6, I'd say 5 to 7 years later now, in the last year and going into the next year, where I'm literally using music from anywhere from the late 90s up until 2014, 15, with some little blurbs from 2015 to now where I'm like, all right, this is kind of
Hmm.
new, but I can as a 35, almost 36-year-old hip hop choreographer and teacher, it's the thing about being artists is you need to be able to adapt, especially when you're young. And a lot of the times
Hmm.
a lot of the times people will judge you because it's like, how well can you adapt as time goes on, as you age? Are you still clinging on to what you were good at
Hmm.
before, or can you get good with how the industry is evolving? And it's a very big dynamic to consider, because it's like you have to learn to adapt, but
Hmm.
are you adapting to the industry, which means you're selling who you are and yourself out,
Right.
or are you evolving with the industry and with time? It's a very complex philosophy, and
The,
I know people have talked about this. I know that this is a very real thing with music too. And I think we can
Yeah,
say,
this is a cool topic. We can definitely, I feel there's two different spectrums with that. Like how you're saying, like, are you moving with the industry, or are you kind of, evolving with it? There's two different ways you can think about that. The fact that, like, how you were just saying, like, are you, going with what the industry standard is, like almost like a sellout. You're just kind of, going with what the trend is of, okay, the industry's doing this now, I got to do this. Okay, in another couple of years the industry's doing this, okay, I got to switch to this. You're just playing the hand puppet type of thing. Whereas on the other hand, you're evolving with yourself, but keeping an eye on what the industry is doing. But and I guess I'm taking this as a music in a music way. Like you're sticking to what your roots are for what you're like musically, but you're evolving to see how much you can grow as a musician, but still keep your roots, but then still be able to, see what the industry is taking, where the industry is taking you, and you can evolve with that, but still keep your roots with that. It's like, it's almost like, being able to have a heavy music band evolve into, you know, playing heavy music, but also taking their heavy songs and be able to take them into acoustic versions, like a band that I know called Wage War. They just put out an acoustic album, but they're more of a heavy metal band. So it shows a different side of them where, they can be a very aggressive, heavy, hard hitting, but then they can sit down and strip down into an acoustic set and be this whole melodic type of thing, which is cool. And I like that how, and I think I've said this in early podcasts too, that I love how a band can evolve, and instead of having the same album every album, we like, I know you can do this type of music. After a while, there's some fans that like having the same album after album. But then there's people like me where, I want to see, like, I know you can do this, but like, you're musicians, you should be able to um evolve and experiment with your musical abilities, so there's definitely two ways you can think of that. And from like the dance portion of it, I want to hear more about what you think of that.
well, I mean, if we're being completely cohesive about the topic, it's we're talking about entertainment as a whole. When you're talking about um, specific um, bands, artists, um, groups from like solo acts from the music industry versus
Hmm.
um, the dance industry. Whether you're going into, you do ballet company work, you do hip hop company work, you do commercial work, which means you're um, doing like television, movies, um, music videos, um,
Hmm.
or you're a dance teacher, like, and it goes into being a music instructor too, like just to like be able to throw that correlation in there, right? Because it's tough if you're a music instructor but you're always teaching like the classical stuff. How are you supposed to survive in this world that's right now if you don't have the knowledge on that stuff, right? So
Hmm.
for me, I'm just getting to that point where I'm understanding like, hey, I have a really difficult conundrum with like the hip hop industry because I have to battle the free speech thing, which I'm supposed to support as an artist. And
Hmm.
I'm really not trying to get into politics. Like, miss me with the Twitter Elon Musk stuff right now. I'm
Right,
talking
right, yeah.
I'm talking about when I go teach children, um, minors 17 and under, which that's a topic of debate too, because if you're trying to set
Hmm.
your high school students up to be able to like handle the professional world straight out of high school, guess what? They have to know music that offers free speech. and know how to handle it professionally and not be like, oh my God, I like at the age of 18, just graduating high school and walk into a class in LA where they're allowed because that's where the industry is rooted.
Hmm.
Like they walk into a class and they're like, I don't know how to dance adult like with the music not censored, but
Right.
it's really hard because like you have parents that are like, hey, I expect my kid to learn choreography to clean music up until they're 18 and then they can go do whatever they want. But you have like, and that's fine when you have students who are dancing as an extracurricular activity until they're 18, and then after they graduate high school they're going to college to become a marine biologist, right? Like that's,
Hmm.
if you're the parents of that kid, of course you don't want them exposed to that until you're okay with it, number one, or number two, you say once they're an adult, free game, it's on them, right?
Yeah.
But you have parents that are like, I want my kid to know the industry before they dive into it. It's like, then they need to know what is really out there when you go to
Hmm.
LA and you take these dance classes and they're teaching things that are max level provocative with the music completely uncensored. It's like
It can be a shock when you're not used to it.
it's a complete culture shock. Thank you for that. I mean, let's
Hmm.
let's let's carry this over into something that um people can kind of associate with. If you're not in the music industry and you're not in the dance or performance industry, let's talk about actors you might know, and namely let's talk about
Right.
everyone's favorite. And when I say that, I am completely joking, but I name Johnny Depp. Okay, so
Hmm.
movies look like Pirates of the Caribbean, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Edward Scissorhands, a complete classic in my book. Okay,
Uh-huh.
um, and then you go to Alice in Wonderland. What's Eating Gilbert Grape? Another classic. Sweeney Todd, Sleepy Hollow. I mean, ugh, the list just goes on with
A
this
lot of
guy.
diverse characters.
So many diverse characters. Okay, and then we talk about another favorite of ours, and his name is Ben Affleck, who is only good at playing one character in all movies, and that is Ben Affleck. He literally
Hmm.
plays himself in everything.
Yeah.
He plays himself in everything, and people will be like, "Oh, I'm going to see that movie because Ben Affleck's in it." Because those people love what he does and what he offers because it's consistent. And then people love Johnny Depp
Yeah.
because he has so much variety in his arsenal that it's like, dude, you never know what to expect with this guy. And that's exactly kind of like the culmination of what we're talking about right now with
Right.
the entertainment
And
industry, the
you know
art
another
industry.
person who's kind of similar to the Ben Affleck thing for an actor that popped him up into my head,
Hmm.
Denzel Washington. You see a lot of his movies consistent. You know,
You know,
Man on Fire, Equalizer, uh, Training
Book of
Day,
Eli,
uh, Book of Eli. You know, so
John
he has
Q.
that
Yeah.
consistent. Yeah, like his movies. You know, you're gonna get that typical Denzel Washington like role. I mean, I've again, I could be wrong, but when I hear Denzel Washington, I mean, hey, he's a great actor, but like when you hear Denzel Washington, he's one of those actors like, all right, I know I'm going to get a good movie out of this, you know, because you expect him to be a certain way in the movie, you know.
I think that he's one of the most stoic, and maybe that's not the word. I think he's one of the most stoic black male actors ever because he can remain cool, calm, and collected and not show a lot of emotion in his face, but his energy and his body language can change. And that's what I
Yeah.
think that I that's what I think really trips people up, because his face doesn't do a lot of adjusting, but
Hmm.
he can be very active, and he can have such a strong presence, like, and just have really subtle dialogue. Oh God, what's that one movie where like he's in jail for a long time? I fr- I fr-
Mm.
I f- I forget the name of it. I can search it real quick because I pulled up those Johnny Depp
Yeah.
movies pretty fast. Um, my dad had that on one night, and it was one of those, like, I sat down and I didn't know what he was watching, and then I didn't move for 2 hours. So I was like, oh my God, what is this? Um,
Right. Yeah.
uh,
But as you're pulling that up, another person, Morgan Freeman, consistent. He has that narrator type of thing. You know you're gonna get that monotone type issue with him. Great actor, but like he's one of those things, like, when you hear the name Morgan Freeman, you already know what you're gonna get. Like like how you say, like Johnny Depp, he has diversity where Jim Carrey, although funny, he had a lot of comedic roles, but it wasn't until like the Truman Show and Eternal Sunshine where he was able to show a different side of him, where he was able to start showing his diverse acting skills, you know and because everybody at that point just knew him as the comedic actor. But then it was almost same thing like Adam Sandler. you know when you go see an Adam
I
Sandler
was
movie,
literally just
the plots.
I was literally just thinking Adam Sandler, like, right before you said him. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, great actor. The plot you're gonna get, so it's great.
All right, maybe we can throw it in the description after the fact when we find it, because I'm just riding the struggle bus finding it. Yeah, I think the thing with, like, Jim Carrey is he said that he used to practice making as many abstract faces in the mirror, like that was his thing.
Yeah.
And that's
Uh-huh.
that's where I'm like, okay, Denzel Washington, his faces, he might have 3 total ever, and that's a gift, by the way. Just kidding. But I feel like the body language, and he can change the tone of his voice, but his face doesn't move a lot. And Ben Affleck is kind of the same thing. I'd actually say Ben Affleck has 2 faces: stoic face, maybe a smile, no teeth. So
No teeth.
I
No teeth.
yeah, I don't know.
Dude, I can't
Dude,
think of Ben Affleck without thinking of the Voyage of the Mimi. I cannot think of him without thinking of that.
Grandpa's got
Every
hypothermia,
time
right?
I
Yeah.
right.
Oh.
Just watching in school, and who would have thought that kid would have played Batman like 20-25 years later?
Batfleck, right?
Yeah, Batfleck.
I don't know, man. Just to kind of tie all this in, I watched Batman and Robin, started it last night and ended it this morning for the first time in years, and forgot how, not that like forgot how, like, unappreciated that it was, because it was, like, not a great movie. It's one of the better.
Which Batman and Robin movie?
George Clooney, Christopher
Okay,
O'Donnell,
that's what
Alicia
I was thinking.
Silverstone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Uma Thurman.
Yeah,
Okay, so,
yeah.
um, dude, if I had to pick between Ben Affleck and George Clooney as Bruce Wayne,
Mm. I mean, honestly, George Clooney did okay, but
It's hard because the whole movie overall kind of like really takes him down a couple notches, right? And
right.
when because Cheyenne actually put it on and she's like, "Oh, this is the George Clooney one." I was like, "You need to change your perspective of how you're approaching this immediately before you start
Mm-hmm.
shatting on it."
You,
Okay, so
you're gonna be pretty upset in a few minutes.
dude, the opening scene
wait,
where they're
wait,
wait. When they're putting on the suits,
yeah,
and I'm like, butt, crotch, nips, and like they're putting on the suits, and she was like, "Yeah, what was that?" I was like, "That's the whole movie. Be ready." And sure enough,
yeah,
we we were laughing so much, and then we made it like 45 minutes in, passed out, and then uh, watched the rest this morning. The Arnold Schwarzenegger one-liners,
yeah. Classic.
they're so fun, man. I mean, and it's not just
Yeah,
him. It's a lot of them, and it's a lot
and I
of how.
think that's where a lot of those movies got a little stale, was because they put too much of the comedic parts in there.
Well,
I think they just started getting too comedic.
well, you'd have to ask like Quentin Tarantino, who was just on Two Bears with, and that episode was really cool too because I was like, oh, I forgot how bad movies got. I I unfortunately like hated that I agreed with him about his comments on Marvel. I think that that's something that we can talk about because he was like, yeah, no, Chris Evans is not now a movie superstar.
Hmm.
Um, Captain America is, and he said the same thing um,
Mm.
about oh god, because there's two of them. There's two brothers. Uh, why can't I remember Thor's name? Chris Hemmingsworth. Did I get that right?
Hemingsworth, yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he was like, yeah, he's not a star. It's they made Thor the star. Like the fact that
They made the character itself, yeah.
yeah, that's tough because I would say, Robert Downey Jr. was a star before he was Iron Man. Let's be serious. Like his work has been great. He's done Sherlock
Hmm.
Holmes. He's a well-renowned, respected actor. Um, I don't think that applies to him. Scarlett Johansson, same thing. She's done her own work outside of all that.
Oh yeah,
Um, but
absolutely.
I have to agree about a lot of the other ones. Like he didn't make a wrong statement. But how many good great movies have you seen with actors and actresses that you weren't familiar with that became big time?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say I think the earlier movie that I saw that Johnny Depp was in was Edward Scissorhands. And which is hilarious because he's completely stoic throughout that movie, doesn't change face, doesn't do anything, right? Um,
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I don't know. I think just to like kind of wrap this up so that we can get out of here, it's there's we have like a couple of friends that are like big about the music scene. And let's pull Limp Bizkit into this because they happen to be one of our favorite bands. They definitely
Uh-huh.
started out a little bit harder. Um, were kind of hard, but made it a little bit more rappy, like
Yeah.
with Significant Other, right? Chocolate Starfish.
Hmm.
I feel like it wanted to have like a rap feel, but wanted to have songs that were like melancholy and then also songs that were like
Uh-huh.
real dark at the same time. That's almost why I really like that album because it
Yeah.
has that variety. And then
What
what
was the
it
song on that album? I think it was Boiler. That was like really,
uh,
really dark.
Boiler, that is exactly the song I was thinking of where it starts off it's like
Hmm.
real eerie and then it's like he goes and then a drop happens. It's just like, oh
Yeah.
god, it's so heavy. I actually think that's my favorite song on that album entirely. Not
because you feel the emotion from Fred Durst. I mean, you everything that he said in that song, like obviously you don't know where he was at that moment, but you feel what he's saying. And you know, if we can kind of, I guess, somewhat go back to like the fact that we were talking about that we don't really get to really not to listen, but we don't care for a lot of the mainstream stuff that's out there right now. I think it's because it's just so predictable now
yeah.
because it's just the same form, especially in pop music, whether it be dance or artistic singer songwriter. I think it's just so predictable now, where you know it's just the same formula, but just a different band or a different artist. Where with something like Limp Bizkit's song "Boiler," you don't get many of those emotional type tracks out there, and obviously that never hit the radio airwaves. You would never be able to put that on the radio. Uh, but I just feel that I mean, hey, for me, being a cover artist since I play cover gigs, there's times where I do have to play modern music. Do I like it? No, but sometimes that's what the audience wants to hear, and you just have to kind of just play the crowd and do all those, which is a lot of what I'm trying to learn too. But yeah, I mean, just going off of that song, it's just like so much emotion was poured into that, and you don't get that with a lot of artists today.
Yeah. I mean, the oh my god, I actually want to go listen to that song immediately after we end this, and maybe we can listen together and do like a tiny reaction to it. Um,
Yeah.
but um, I the variety and dynamic in that song, because like I said, it starts out real eerie, and then he does the little like
Hmm.
whine, and then the music builds up in the background, and then there's like this Satan that's like, and then it goes, ah, and it almost releases him because he was
Hmm.
like whining and
Yeah.
hurting, and then he's like, ah, and then it's like that,
Uh-huh.
and then the verse starts with him just like chat, like the verses are almost him just straight talking, and then when the chorus hits, he's subtly he's subtly doing the Fred Durst thing. I don't know. He's
Yeah. Every verse builds up to this big thing, like you said, like that first crescendo, and then he gets into like the first verse is like a little more monotone, second verse is a little bit more vocal, third verse he's just like pounding it out,
yeah, and then
so
it ends with him doing the why he's like diving into
yeah,
like really dark places where he's like emotionally traumatized, and he's like,
those are like one of the songs that I would love to be in the studio seeing that song being tracked.
yeah, I agree.
Like that vocal track, I would love to be the fly on the wall to see that vocal being tracked.
Yeah, I mean it's like me with a lot of my favorite uh like a handful of my favorite pieces that I've seen online from like companies, either whether they be in New York, California, around this country, or internationally. I'm like, God, I would just
Mhm.
love to see how they piece this together, like the process. Dude, we jumped in on that conversation a little bit more in depth than we anticipated, but I'm so happy that we did. We haven't talked about music and dance. We haven't talked about music and dance, uh, given our passion in a
In that type
while.
of aspect in a while.
In a
While.
while, a while, yeah.
But
Um,
if I can do one thing before we get out of here,
of course,
I do got to give a shout out. I mean, I'm wearing, the man, the myth, the legend, Jimi Hendrix. Uh, this past Monday, I believe the 28th of November, uh, Jimi Hendrix would have been 80 years old. So he had just passed his 80th birthday. And for those who personally know me and Jim, I mean, he knows this. I am forever a big Jimi Hendrix fan. He's the reason I picked up a guitar. He was one of the first artists that I started, learning songs from, and my dad introduced me to him at a very young age. So it's always like been a thing to me to think, if he was still alive, what would he be, venturing in right now? Because at the time before he passed, he was just really getting into like the Band of Gypsies, and he was really starting to experiment with a lot of his music. And I can only imagine the stuff that he would have been coming up with, because he had a very short span of his fame. Because Purple Haze, Hey Joe, all those, he only really made 2 or 3 albums before he passed. And then that's when, because he was always in the studio, so the remainder of those were a lot of just B-track studio sessions and stuff that he had recorded, and they just eventually, just put them all out there. But I can only I always think, I can only imagine what he would have been doing today. So I gotta, for my sake, I gotta give a happy 80th birthday to the man, the myth, the legend, Jimi Hendrix.
One love, man. One set.
So, one love.
I love it, man.
So, do we want to wrap this up, buddy? I mean, I know I thought we had a pretty good, music and dance song. Like we said, we went a little more into it, but it was cool to kind of, pour a lot of stuff into that, because we haven't had a legit dance music talk, and because we started this podcast to show a lot of our passions with dance and music, and over the last couple of months we've started to explore other things with other episodes of showing our different sides. But it was cool to kind of bring it back in to show everyone who could be a new listener at this point with us, and everybody who has been checking out, we say thank you. But it's been cool to kind of also go back to dissecting our passions.
Yeah, it's almost like it was meant to be, to let it all just like accumulate to this point, to be like, all right, let's just unload on, because we've been talking about this for weeks. It's like, we should maybe acknowledge, it's like, all right, I got like a couple things I can talk about. I actually have a few other things that I can talk about, but I'm definitely going to save that for maybe the next episode or one of the upcoming ones. Maybe even starting out,
for sure.
Maybe even starting out January by reflecting back, because there are definitely things that I haven't gotten to talk about that, like, I just have a lot of personal stuff going on that I'm handling right now, that I'm like, I think once I hit that holiday break and I can like really just take the time to reflect and be like, okay, what just happened this past year? And then maybe come January, be able to like put them out there in the air. Because I don't want these episodes being 2 hours long. I mean, they can, obviously, but
right.
yeah, I think we had a great one. We're at about an hour now. Anthony, I love you, man. Thank you. And for those that just want to know, on like in the background, we recorded, I think 2 weeks ago, just to get us covered through the Thanksgiving break. So it's been a couple weeks. So it's so great to see you, man. I know I looked forward.
Absolutely, brother.
I know I looked forward. I looks forward. I looked forward to seeing you. I looked forward to seeing you so much tonight and being able to catch up with you. And for anyone that's watching along, we thank you so much. It's like, just, I was so apprehensive to getting into something like this, and I think I just got down to the point where, like, anyone that wants to do something, they want to be great at it, right? Like, who signs up for something and says, "Oh, like this is this is going to be pretty okay if I'm a failure at it, unless if you're Calhoun Tubbs, right? Um,
For over
anyway,
75 years.
75 years. Why not? Um, Now, the one thing is, did he know he was going to be a failure for over 75 years? That's the kicker here. No, but and
That's the $1,000,000 question.
that is $1,000,000 question. But I actually signed on to this, and I was like, um, just like anything else, if you don't take the leap because you don't like, you're afraid that you might not reach that maximum success point, then what are you amounting to at all? Right. So I was just like,
Hmm.
why don't I just do this? It's a great opportunity for me to catch up with my best friend from sixth grade. This one set pod. Um, it's so freaking cool, man. Thank you for all that you have done. And I just have to say, and this is something that I would say in like the last episode of the year before we start season 2. It's been pretty fun to watch how invested that you are in doing all of the behind the scenes production stuff and asking me, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? So for all of the visual effects and all of the shorts that you see, it's been Anthony this entire time that's been really putting everything together. I'm just giving him kind of my input on it. But he's doing all of the legwork on it. Thank you. This has been such a fun ride up until here. I am excited to see where we move going forward. So thank you.
All the love, brother. Yeah, I mean, we're moving into our last month of the year, and we have we have some fun content coming for you guys. It's been a great year. Again, never would have thought we've been going at it this long. Seems like we're just starting to, get our bearings straight with this whole podcasting thing, and can't think of another person I want to be, doing this journey with. So, love you, brother. Guys, before we sign off, again, we have to do the whole plugs and everything. Make sure you guys like and subscribe on our YouTube channels. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go to our links in the description, and you can listen to us on your own preferred platform. We do have our online store. Make sure you guys go check that out. And if you like anything, you can support the pod by go picking up some merch. And we did start an email list. That's going to be in the description as well. It's just starting out, so we'll be, giving you guys some updates on when we're uploading every week, maybe some behind the scenes footage and everything, and some, we'll be giving some exclusive offers into the merch store when we have them too. So, and to any new listeners, thank you for joining our podcast, the One Set Podcast, and we look forward to connecting with everybody. So again, we will see you all on the next episode.
Love you, bro. Love all of you. Thank you
Love
so
you too.
much.